I was saying if the fossil fuel text is in, if there's a phase out of coal with a just transition, then it's a bridging into the end of the fossil fuel era.
Yeah. And that is up in the air because we heard India and South Africa and China really questioning whether those words should make it into the final text.
It is
out in the last minute.
It is up in the air right now. We'll see what comes out. I think that they're looking perhaps for more reassurances on the support that they would get in order to go through a just and equitable phase out of those fossil fuels. But we need that. 1.5 means you have to phase out fossil fuels. So you need that kind of cooperation there.
I mean, Greta Thunberg's just been tweeting saying, beware of the spin of selling this as a great success. That is what's about to happen, isn't it? I mean, you can see it already in that room over there.
I just heard John Kerry trying to spin this as a good thing. It isn't.
Why not?
Well,
I mean, there is some agreement, isn't there?
I'm talking about the most vulnerable people on the planet. They came here expecting to hear something being done about loss and damage. And all we got is a dialogue to talk more about it. That's absolutely unacceptable.
Well, so you wanted a new pot of money, effectively?
We wanted to at least start talking about a new pot of money.
I mean, they haven't even got to the original 100 billion that they promised years ago, and you want more money, is the thing.
Well, it's happening now. Loss and damage is a reality. It's not about adaptation and mitigation anymore.
Now, you in the past have said COP is just not fit for purpose. Are you really saying that this whole process just needs to be scrapped and something else?
No, I'm saying it's failed. We've done it for 26 times and climate change has not stopped. It's happening already as we speak. But we have to carry on. We hope we'll do it next year again in Egypt and do it better next time.
Jennifer, what do you make of that argument?
Well, I think that, the reason why the UN is important is because the most vulnerable countries are at the table, and they have been completely betrayed at this meeting to not have what's needed. The impacts are happening now. We're seeing them in developed countries that have the resources, developing countries after COVID. I mean, come on, they need to be there. But you need to have a United Nations do this. But it needs to be revamped. It needs to be able to deliver. And it's not the process. It's the countries.
But you've got a real sense, and they're all streaming out of that hall now. The last comments have obviously just finished. But you've got a real sense, country after country of the developing nations, we're basically saying, we've been done over. This is not fair, but we're not going to be the ones blamed for sinking this agreement, so we'll go along with it. So what kind of process is that when basically the developed world bullies the developing world into agreeing with it?
It's a process that doesn't have voting rules because Saudi Arabia has blocked them since the early 90s. Right? You have to know there are over 500 fossil fuel lobbyists here that are working very hard to get countries like Saudi Arabia, other countries, to slow this thing down so it's not possible. And it's not about the most vulnerable. It's about them and protecting their corporate interests. So if you want to improve the process, kick those fossil fuel lobbyists out, and then maybe we would have a better shot.
I mean, when you say you come back and do it better, do you actually have a way of doing it better?
We will in Egypt. We hope the Egyptian presidency will take this issue seriously, which the British presidency didn't.
Really?
Absolutely didn't.
Why did you say that? I mean,
well, we wanted loss and damage
committed
to be
to
a
this
major
over a long
agenda
time.
item here. They refused to do that. We wanted the fund to be established here. They refused to do that. They even took language out of the text yesterday at the insistence of the US. The COP26 presidency did not play in our favor at all.
And do you think it could have ever been different?
Absolutely.
Or is that just a product of the presidency being held by a developed world nation?
Partly, yes. I mean, they were the ones who bent to the US. They didn't listen to us. They said they were going to listen to us, but they didn't in the end.
And do you think there could have been, diplomacy in advance of these 2 weeks that would have come to a different outcome? That's all. Again, quietly you hear people saying failure of diplomacy, failure of diplomacy. Do you think that is a real problem?
I think the problem is that the Prime Minister didn't really prioritize the most vulnerable, didn't put money on the table. He was cutting his aid budget. He could, if he had had a credible here, he could have then put more pressure on other countries to do the same.
Just finally, I mean, we've seen something really interesting this year in which the activist movement seems slightly divided between those out there on the streets who are very angry and dismiss this whole project, and people like you who are in the halls engaging with the process. Are you in danger as well of perhaps looking out of touch with where the young people are?
I think what I would say is that the only reason why there's any millimeter things that are good in this text is because of the movement outside. It's because of the indigenous peoples, it's because of youth, it's because of climate activists. We try and bring their voices in here, because if you just leave it to the negotiators, we would have an even worse outcome here than what we have now.
What do you make
Pressure
of that?
from the outside is incredibly important. It has to continue, and I regard myself as their spokesman here.
So you're not an insider, even
No.
though you've been at 26 COPs?
Well, that's why I know how the process works, why I'm on the inside, but I speak for them. I don't speak for the governments here.
Correct.
So when they stand at that podium just there, shortly, and declare victory and breakthrough,
They'll be lying.
bluntly as that,
Absolutely.
do you agree with that?
I think that this outcome will be meek and it will be weak. I want to see what happens on the coal and the fossil fuel issues, because if there is something there, then that could be that signal out there that it is the end of coal, and that is incredibly important. But it has not risen to the moment. It is not responding to what youth needs, and it's not commensurate with what the science is telling us.